Good morning, everyone. Okay, so welcome to the special meeting of the Heritage Properties Committee. I'm going to call the meeting to order. So, Mr. Clerk, we have quorum.
Yes, I can confirm we do have quorum. We have had 2 resignations from the committee, so going forward until those are replaced, our quorum will be 4. So much easier to maintain quorum going forward, hopefully.
Okay, that's good news. So I'm going to call for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda. Okay, Jane, and all in favor? Okay, great, and the agenda is approved. Okay, there are no minutes to confirm at this meeting. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay, I see none. There are no delegations for this meeting. There are no briefings for this meeting, no pre-consultations, no policy development and implementation issues. There are no Stream 2 permits, so we're moving right into our Stream 3 permits. And so the first one up for consideration, application for Ontario Heritage Act approval for 115 Lower Union Street. So there's a report attached. I'm going to ask staff to introduce the application.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is at 115 Lower Union Street. It's on the north side of Lower Union and east of Bagot. The property has frontage on both streets. The property is designated both under Part 4 and 5 of the Heritage Act. It's in the Old Sydenham Heritage District. The applicants are asking for approval to remove a later single-story rear addition on the back of the property and replace it with a slightly larger single-story addition with a rooftop terrace. The addition is to provide additional indoor storage space in lieu of a garage. It'll be clad in gray concrete fiberboard in a horizontal clapboard style and topped with wooden railings, and includes 3 black sash windows in a 4/4 glazing pattern. An existing period window is proposed to be removed and replaced with a sliding patio door, similar wood with metal cladding, and to provide access to the rooftop patio. We've reviewed this application. It was circulated both to this committee and internally. And Madam Chair, we find that this application for the new addition and window alteration is compatible in terms of its materiality, profile, and design, yet subordinate to the attached heritage building in terms of its height, massing, and location. And it will ensure that the prominence of the property and its contribution to the district are conserved. And we're recommending approval. Thanks.
Thank you. Does the applicant have anything to add if they're here? Okay. Seeing that there isn't any further information to add at this point, questions from the committee, I'm going to remind you, you have 5 minutes each, and that this is a Part 5, so there are no amendments that can be made. But I'll open the floor to the committee for questions. Gunnar.
Excuse me, Gunnar, you just need to turn on your microphone so we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. I find that the applicant is removing a clutter that is presently not visible from the street, but is replacing it with clutter that is destructive to the heritage value of particularly this building and the district. And I would like to see an amendment made to Part 6 of the application. And this should say that the owner shall add architectural details such as the raised masonry foundation, coping at the deck level, and to set the deck back.
Gunnar, I'm just going to interrupt you. As I mentioned at the beginning, no amendments can be made to Part 5s. So you may ask a question and you can comment, but we cannot make an amendment at this stage.
Point of clarification. Can there be a motion made to amend? It's either pass or reject. On the basis of that I have no choice but to reject when it comes to a vote.
We're not at the stage of calling the question. Right now, you have opportunity to ask questions. So if you'd like to ask some questions on the matter, please feel free to proceed to ask those questions and get some clarity around your concerns.
So the question is, will the applicant extend the raised foundation? And will the applicant, or would the applicant provide the coping to replicate the band line of the building at the same level? And would he either do something to make the enclosure that is facing the laneway invisible from the street? These are 3 questions.
And I'll refer this to staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's unfortunate to call this clutter. This is a well-designed, well-thought-out addition that these owners have put a lot of effort into. We are fully supportive of what they've proposed. The condition that the member is speaking to, number 6, I believe, in the list of conditions, allows the applicant, or has forwarded the comments from the member to the committee, or to the applicant for their consideration in their final design of this plan, and we will follow up to see if they have done so, and if they wish to make minor changes, which we can approve in-house. But we are certainly supportive of what is before us. And the applicants are here if they choose to speak to this.
Does the applicant wish to speak to the matter or comment? If so, just come to one of the microphones.
If you wish to make and just give your name so I can put it in the minutes, please.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. My name is Robert Paz. The house is actually owned by my brother, Erez Paz, who's sitting over there.
You can sit if you'd like.
Oh, sit? No, that's okay. I'll stand.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention that the structure that exists currently is dilapidated. It looks like it's falling apart. And what we're proposing is going to beautify the property. We were also made to understand that the addition should not match the house, but should be clearly, visibly separate from the house. Like it shouldn't look the same as the original structure. I'm not sure if that's correct or not. And then the final thing I wanted to mention is that it's absolutely not going to be visible from the street. It's the house is going to extend past the addition that we're proposing. Thank you.
Do you wish to clarify for the applicant?
Yes, Madam Chair, I can certainly, if as the committee is familiar with the district plan, section 522 specifically notes that additions should be complementary to the main building and clearly secondary in size, and they should also be clearly distinguishable in form and detail. And additions should be located away from the main street. And as part of good heritage conservation planning, one of the high-level policies that we often refer to in the standards and guidelines refers to new additions should be a product of their own time, and they should, while be complementary and subordinate, should look like they aren't historic in nature, that they're actually new to it. It helps future lay people be able to read a building clearly, that this is the old, historic, important part of the building. This is a later addition that is pleasant and well-designed, but clearly not an old part of the building. So I hope that helps.
Thank you for the clarification. Gunnar, you have 3 minutes left. Do you have any other questions?
I agree with the applicant's statement that what's there is dilapidated and deserves to be removed. But I plead that whatever it is provided to replace it should enhance the entire area as well as the building. Right now, It is, in my view, self-serving to the building and not to the neighborhood, Northern Heritage. I have a sketch that is not entirely correct, but it was evolutionary. There were some changes made since it was discussed. They are an improvement, but this addition robs a lot of sky area from the street view. That's a rear street or a side street view, and I would like that sky area returned back to the neighborhood. And that's why I'm asking for the fence to be set back or made transparent.
Okay, so do you have a question, or is that just the comment you'd like to leave with us?
That is a comment, as I said, but as it's, I'm limited to as I can do it, so all I can do is comment, I think.
Yes, thank you. Does anyone wish to reply to that? Okay. Gunnar, is there anything further, because you do have another minute left? Or is that? Okay. We can come back to a second round, so what I'll do is I'll give you a few moments and I'll see if anyone else has comments or questions, and I can come back for a second round if you have more questions, okay?
I have no more questions.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else in the committee have questions? Alex?
Gotcha. I just wanted to clarify that I know the existing addition is not visible, but the proposed addition would not be visible from, I live like 3 doors down from this, and I didn't even know it had this rear addition. So the existing structure is definitely not visible from the street, but I just want to clarify that the new addition would not be visible from the street at all.
Ryan?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, certainly the existing addition is not visible. It's stepped back, it's very modest. This one, the building is sort of an L-shaped building, and this is a sort of a cubby, I forget the term, tucked in the elbow there. It will be brought up forward, and it will be relatively in line with that wall if you're looking down the driveway. So to say that it's invisible is, I don't think, fair. I think if you're looking for it, walking down Bagot Street, you may catch a glimpse of it. But on this particular property, there is no other further hidden portion of the property, if that helps.
Okay, Alex, do you have any other questions?
No, that's, I just wanted to make one other comment, just in regards to the work that they've done in restoring that property. I think is fantastic. You know, I'm sure it's been an expensive project, but they've really put time and work into restoring that property, and I think it's beautiful what they've done. I think I understand what he's saying in terms of the cubby aspect of the property, and if you were really looking for it, you might be able to see it, but you know, I think you kind of have to go down that laneway to really see this new structure. So I don't think, you know, it's really going to change the view from the street, at least.
Thank you, Alex. Does anyone else on the, Jane, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. I noticed on the specifications for the windows, it said the glass was black. I think that's probably an error. And now I can't see it on here, but when I reviewed it, I'm sure the glass isn't black, but could you just clarify that?
Go ahead.
I don't believe the glass will be black, Madam Chair. It must have been an error, yeah. The frames are going to be, but I think the glass is clear. The applicant should confirm, but I'm sure.
Okay, and my other question is, I'm just wondering, I don't know how old the limestone is in that old building that you're removing and replacing, but I'm wondering if there's any plan for repurposing that or offering it to someone who might be able to use it, a mason or a group that's working on a project.
Okay. Does anyone else on the committee have any questions or comments? Okay. So seeing none, we'll move to the public. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment or have questions? Okay, over here. And I think you know the drill, Don. State your name.
Yes, I'm Don Taylor. I just have a question. I notice, I accept the understanding that the addition shouldn't attempt to duplicate the original structure. At the same time, it shouldn't look like an alien structure. And for the most part, I think it's quite reasonable. What does trouble me is the overhead garage door. In that part of the city, there are not many, if any, overhead-style garage doors. It's very much a post-war feature. And my understanding is that it is not going to be used as a garage. What it could be used for is sometimes for person entry and sometimes for larger things, lawnmowers, snowblowers, whatever. I'm just guessing. But my question is, why would the design include an overhead-style door instead of a double door, so you could open one half or both halves as required? Thank you.
And applicant or Ryan? Excuse me, would you just step forward to the microphone and state your name, please?
Hi, my name is Erez. I'm the owner of the house. My thinking with that was that if we had two large doors that swung in, that would take up space inside the garage, valuable space inside the garage that we wanted to keep as floor space. And I'm not sure if it would be allowed for doors to swing out. So that's why the thinking with the overhead garage door was to maintain the maximum amount of floor space inside the garage. Thank you.
Thank you. Don, do you have any further questions? Oh, sorry, he can only ask the one, I'm sorry. My bad. So thank you, Don, I appreciate the questions and comments. Okay, so I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that this go to council approval with all of the conditions attached. Okay, Alex, Jane, any further questions or comments from the committee? Jane?
Okay. Yes. There. I just wanted to talk about the garage doors as well. It's really hard to find heritage-appropriate garage doors, and I would like to suggest that perhaps you can stay away from the raised panel style, because that's really it's a very modern look, and if you can find something, and I have, that gives the impression of vertical rather than horizontal and more of a flat panel, I would suggest that you really put an effort into it, because it's a large expanse of door, and I think I would appreciate it if you would just consider not raised panel doors. Thanks.
Thank you, Jane. Anyone else from the committee? Okay, seeing no other questions or comments, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you, and Gunnar is opposed. All right, so we're on to our next property, which is 23 Sydenham Street, and I will ask staff to introduce the application, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, the property is at 23 Sydenham Street, which is also commonly known as the Lily House. It is located mid-block between Earl Street and West Street, and is within the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District, designated under Part 5. An application for alteration under Section 42 of the Act has been submitted, requesting approval to construct a new fence adjacent to Lily Lane that is approximately 6 feet in height with a lattice design on top. The application also includes a request to repair, and if repairs are not possible, to replace a portion of an existing fence. The applicant did receive approval for this work in 2018. However, the 3-year timeline did lapse before the work began. Upon review of the submitted materials, as well as the applicable policies and legislation, staff is recommending approval of the proposed scope of work, and they are subject to the conditions outlined within the associated report. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the agent or applicant have any comments if they're present? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move to the committee for questions. And again, a reminder that this is a part 5. Anyone from the committee wish to ask questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, are there any questions or comments from the public? Okay, seeing none. I need someone to move and someone to second this. Okay, Anne and Alex, thank you. Any final comments or questions? Jane.
So this is a really important property on a very historic lane, and I would like the applicant to consider something that has a little space between the boards, which I put in my dash comments, still allow privacy but some airflow. They could paint one side even though their neighbors might not want to paint. I've seen this done successfully at Bellevue House. It looks great. I would also like to suggest that since the design is sort of not really in the application, it's kind of up to the planners and the applicant, I think this is the forum to say perhaps some improvements could be made in the concept of the design. I think the design with the lattice on top and the really tight together boards gives a fortress-like feel to Lily Lane. And my suggestion would be to do a step-down fence. It's a lot of fencing. I don't know how many feet it is. But I've seen this done successfully where you start at 6 feet, you go down to 5 feet, you go down to 4 feet, and by the time you get to Lily Lane, you might have 4 feet. You could put lattice on top as well because that is allowed above the 6 feet. But I would suggest lattice that is square as opposed to diamond shaped might be more historically appropriate for this home. I'm saying this because Lily Lane is lovely. What you don't want is tons of really high fences and you don't actually get to experience the laneway as it would have been at the time of the build of the houses. So I'm appealing to the planner and the owner that perhaps they could think about a step-down fence and just even a ½ inch between the panels. You can kind of see through, but it does give you privacy and it's not tight together. It allows airflow and light. Thanks.
Thank you, Jane, for the thoughtful comments, and I hope they'll be given some consideration. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Gunnar?
Microphone, please, Gunnar.
Thank you. Notice along Lindy Lane, none of the existing fences are topped with lattice work. To add for this section lattice work on top would be disruptive to the pastiche of the area. Similarly, none of them are presently stepped. They follow the grade. These are two essential things that I think are very important to preserve what's left of the heritage or the heritage value of Lily's Lane. The last thing is, promised is a sliding gate over the widths, and that it's going to be very difficult to implement, and we have no drawings, no indication how it's being done. Would it not be appropriate to make it conditional that a proper sliding gate be provided that we can understand how it works?
Thank you for that, Gunnar. Again, we can't make amendments or further conditions at this stage because we're reviewing part 5s. But thank you for the comments. Are there any further comments with regards to the motion?
Point of privilege. What is the sense of us going there, doing research, putting our work into it and suggesting it's ignored. I know it's 107, but it's still an important aspect. It's a very large area for which a sliding gate is being proposed. How to execute it, I guess we're about to approve a cat in a bag, and I'm not happy with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I might suggest that this is the type of comment that would be better in our question section so that you can get some further answers. We've now called the motion, so this is just an opportunity to speak to the motion. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else from committee wish to speak to the motion? Okay, so I'm going to call the motion. All in favor? Okay, and that passes with Gunnar opposed. Okay, we're almost halfway there. We're now on to 268 Main Street, and I'm going to ask staff to introduce the application, please.
Through you, Madam Chair. The subject property, 268 Main Street, which is also known as the St. Mark's Anglican Church, is designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. It is located on the northern edge of the village of Berryfield on a hill and is clearly visible at key vantage points in Berryfield and by those traveling along Highways 2 and 15. St. Mark's is a two-story Gothic Revival stone church with an associated tower that consists of 3 bays and is accessed by a long ascending driveway from Main Street. Broadly, the proposal is requesting approval to conduct large-scale like-for-like restoration works, namely to repoint significant portions of the building with an emphasis on the buttresses on the north and south elevations, deconstruct and reconstruct like-for-like much of the tower buttresses and pinnacles, replace and/or repair stone units as needed, and add masonry joint improvements to both pinnacles to increase their longevity. The completion of these works is essential to maintain this important landmark. The proposed changes should both improve and restore the structural integrity of the church as well as address existing safety concerns. Finally, with ongoing maintenance, the church should maintain its role as the subject of important viewscapes within and outside of the district. With that in mind, there's a couple conditions I just wanted to flag for the committee here, and that is that all masonry work shall be completed in accordance with the city's masonry policy, and that any masonry units shall be sourced to match. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. If the applicant or their agent is present, do they have anything to add? Okay, I see nothing coming forward, so we're going to move to committee. So are there any questions from the committee regarding this application? Jane, go ahead.
I probably missed this in the application, but could you clarify where the limestone's coming from?
Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair. So in this case, when I spoke with the applicant intends to use locally sourced limestone from the Petworth Quarry. The person who is doing the masonry work is a CAT member, Matt Moray, who has extensive material with both local and related aggregates in the area. So I believe his assessment would complement and maintain the heritage value of the property. Thank you.
Okay, Jane, do you have any other questions? Okay, excellent. Anyone else from the committee have questions regarding this property and the application? Okay, seeing none, does the public have any questions or comments? Okay, and I see none again. Is there someone on the line?
I recognize Shirley Bailey, and I'm going to let you speak just one moment.
Go ahead.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this. I just have one comment, I guess, about one of the recommendations that's made in the report. And it refers to, I think, number 2, to using heritage mortar. Now, the city guideline has reference to a 116 mortar and also a 129 mortar. And I wondered if it wouldn't be preferable, I mean, it's too late, of course, now, but in the future, it would be good for the staff recommendation to actually specify what the mortar is. And I wonder if the applicant could speak to this. I think I heard staff say that it was going to be a like for like, but a heritage mortar, as we are seeing, is quite different than the standard 116 that's used.
Okay. Shirley, are there any other questions or comments?
No,
Okay.
Madam Chair, that's the only question I have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. So staff or the applicant?
Through you, Madam Chair. So when I spoke with the applicant, Matt Moray, he mentioned that it was heritage mortar and that he specified it would follow all heritage guidelines in the city. When I spoke with him, I believe it was 116, but he didn't specify that in writing, so I can't confirm definitively. But to your point there, Shirley, it is definitely like for like. And as this member has many, many years of experience, I trust that he, and as a CAT member, I would trust that he would use the appropriate mortar for the long-term viability of the project. And certainly, when I even asked him if he's going to follow the masonry policy, his response was absolutely, there's no question. So I do have trust in this applicant's follow-up on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. That's appreciated. Okay, seeing as there are no other comments or questions to address, can I have a mover and a seconder for the motion? Alex and Jane? Okay, so any further questions or comments from the committee regarding the motion? Okay, and seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, so our next properties up for consideration are 221 King Street East and 33 Earl Street. Could I please have staff introduce the application?
Through you, Madam Chair. So the subject property is designated under Part 4 and 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act and contains two addresses, 221 King Street East and 33 Earl Street, both of which are on the same property. It is located on the eastern corner of King Street East and Earl Street. The building is set back approximately 10 meters from the King Street East property line, and the King Street East frontage contains a 2.5-story square building with 3 bays that rest on an ashlar base, as well as a 2-bay wide modern addition. The modern addition along Earl Street is 3 bays wide and is built to the property line. The proposal is requesting to permit the updating of their landscaping along both elevations, specifically updating both walkways along both elevations, adding raised limestone bounded garden beds to the King Street East facade, adding a limestone perimeter wall along the King Street East commercial sign, adding new sympathetic trees in front of King Street East's facade, reinstating the likely original limestone street wall that abuts Earl Street, reinstate the likely 18th or 19th century stone pillar that is suspected to be original in its original location, and regrade portions of the property nearest to the building to accommodate the proposed landscaping and to address water infiltration. I wanted to note that due to the large setback on such a prominent street as King Street East, it draws extra attention, so additional changes and updates to this property would have a disproportionately large effect in terms of people viewing it and appreciating it. So we have an opportunity here to put forward some potentially large improvements that would be felt beyond just the property itself. Generally speaking, the reinstatement of the historic limestone landscaping features is based on historical and physical evidence, which would restore some of the property's lost heritage value. And updating the landscaping would focus more attention on the King Street East entrance instead of the Earl Street one, while also emphasizing the limestone and vegetation on the property, as well as within the district. And although this entrance is not original, as in the King Street East is not the original main entrance, the landscaping works will refocus it on this main entrance, which is the facade that has the most heritage value on the property. And I wanted to note a couple conditions that I wanted to flag for the committee's consideration. So the finalized landscaping design will be provided to heritage planning staff for approval prior to installation. Replacement of masonry units for the reinstated fence and stone pillar shall be sourced to match. And a grading plan shall be provided to heritage planning staff and engineering services for review and approval prior to the commencement of grading works to ensure that there is limited drainage opportunities that would fall off the property in that respect. So with that, I'll put this before you guys and looking forward to any feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Are there any additions from the applicant or their agent? Okay, seeing none. So questions from the committee? Jen, go ahead.
Hello. I'm just have some questions about the planters. I was seeing that, I was wondering if they had a cap at all, and if they were dry stack or if they were mortared. We're going through all these design considerations with another project that I'm working on, and just the freeze thaw from having the water like right up against, or the soil right up against the limestone wall has been a huge factor in sort of what the design is. So I was just wondering if you could provide some more detail. No, just actually the planters. So having like the limestone, so it's my understanding it's limestone, basically a retaining wall, and then you're putting soil in it? Yes.
Okay, would you please just step forward, state your name, and answer just for the record? Thank you.
Sorry.
No worries.
Mark Shaw.
Oh, hey, Mark. So yeah, with the planters, I was just wondering if they would have a cap on the top with on the limestone, or if you were just gonna like taper it so that the water drains off.
Ah, that's interesting. We actually haven't got to that yet
Okay.
in the final design, which, as Philip said, has to be, it's going to go back to him anyway.
Oh, okay.
So-
Okay.
Anyway, can I say, yeah, I've appreciated throughout this process the fairly spirited back and forth with ideas, a lot of things that I hadn't considered at the beginning, and neither had the landscaper. So thank you to all the committee for all the input.
No worries at all. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just, again, I have a project right now where we're doing a limestone wall that's a retaining wall. And these are like all the things that we've been discussing with the mason. So I just had wanted to, yeah, mention them and see if you guys had addressed them that. And if not, then I look forward to later hearing about them.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Any other questions or comments from committee? Jane, go ahead.
I'm going to go back to that limestone foundation and using are you using the foundation as the back of the planter, or is there some other protection for the foundation?
Go ahead.
That is the current plan, yes. You know, and we respect that we got some ideas from the committee, and that went back and forth between me and the landscaper, but currently we're looking at putting it back to the foundation. But obviously, I'm certainly willing to listen to further expert advice, because obviously it's very important to me that I don't screw up the water infiltration issue rather than making it better, you know.
Yes, so I guess I'll comment then. I would be very concerned about using the limestone foundation as the back of the planter. I think you need something else there, or you might, because you've got to keep the water. Limestone is very porous, and so is the mortar. And I'm concerned that even if you water judiciously, it will still be soaking into your foundation, and that's not a good thing. And so I think you need to make sure that the foundation is protected, and that it's also not providing the earth isn't, or the planter isn't putting force against the foundation in the freeze thaw, as Jen mentioned. I think that should be and is a real concern. So I think that does need to be addressed. I'm not sure if I had other questions here.
I'm just going to interject briefly, because that is now a building matter, correct?
My apologies. Can you repeat that, Madam Chair? I missed that.
Excuse me, I just didn't hear you, Phil. Oh, did you not hear my question?
Yes.
I'm just, what we're commenting on now has to do with water and seepage and all of that, and my understanding that that is actually a building permit issue, correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, it would be an issue that is not reviewed at the heritage staff level. It does depend on if a building permit would be triggered or not, because some landscaping works do not trigger a building permit for that type of review. At this point, it would be up to the homeowner to have the interest in their own property to not allow water inflows into their property. And in my discussions with Mr. Shaw, he does not have any intention of having water inflow into his property, but does appreciate the advice from the committee about flagging this concern early on. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Mark, for your concern about that matter and making sure that it gets resolved. Jane, go ahead.
I just have another question. I wanted to ask if the sign is going to be painted. I know that you're going to do some work around it, but what's the intent with the actual sign?
The sign has been completed and is on the front lawn. It's very nice.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah,
I guess I
that-
haven't looked.
That was a separate permit that went a few months ago, and it was installed about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, terrific,
So
thank you.
please walk by.
That's it.
Looks like we need to take a stroll, Jane. Does anyone on the committee have any further questions or comments at this stage? Gunnar, please go ahead.
I just need your mic, Gunnar.
It'll be ingrained in my brain sooner or later, perhaps sooner. With all due respect, Madam Chair, drainage is not a building permit issue, nor does the city of Kingston have any means of policing it. That's as far as I'm concerned. However, this project was initiated in part because of a drainage problem into the building. And the landscape plan as presented will aspirate the moisture or drainage problem off the site altogether. And I feel the design as presented without a drainage backup to validate it is flawed or is premature. Perhaps the applicant can advise that he would implement something like having a comprehensive drainage plan prepared that is complementary to the landscape plan and will also address the moisture problem, and have this plan endorsed by a qualified consulting engineer or by whatever city authority that that is qualified to act accordingly.
Okay, thank you, Gunnar, for the comments. Again, drainage
That
is...
is a question, Madam.
Yeah, it is a question, and I've heard the question. It is technically not a heritage question. If the applicant or staff wishes to respond, I will give them the opportunity. However, I'm just noting that that is not actually part of the heritage process. So does anyone wish to respond? You do not have to. Phil, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Chair, just wanted to flag that one of the conditions of the permit is a grading plan will be provided to staff and engineering services for review prior to the commencement of grading works. So while it is not exactly what you're mentioning, Gunnar, it is something that will be considered before the works are completed. Thank you.
Okay, so just a solid confirmation that prior to the work beginning, there will be consideration given to the matter.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Okay. So it is going to be reviewed, Gunnar, and so that's the answer to this question, that it will be properly reviewed, but it's not a matter for Heritage Committee.
Perhaps you can clarify this. I'm asking that a drainage plan is prepared that is complementary to the landscape plan, and that drainage plan addresses the site drainage as well as a foundation drainage.
I understand your question, and again, I'm going to have to unfortunately say that this is not part of the Heritage Properties realm. I think that the applicant has heard the request and seems willing to take our comments under advisement. So I'm going to move on this conversation and ask if you have any questions regarding the heritage application that's before us.
Madam Chair, should I be satisfied that drainage will be looked after for this site?
My answer is yes, but I will again refer to staff if they have anything further to add on this matter. No. Okay, so they have answered that this will be considered, but that's at a different stage that is not part of the heritage application process. Okay. Are there any other questions, Gunnar?
No.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from Anne? Go ahead.
I think the discussion, all of this has been covered in the alterations to be subject to the following conditions. I really believe this project has been very well thought out, bit by bit by bit, and I really support this.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Any other questions? Jen, go ahead.
So I think maybe what Gunnar was talking about I was just wondering, like how the drainage issue has been addressed in these plans.
Okay, and again, this
And
is...
if it has, I guess
Yeah.
is the question, yeah.
It's not technically part of the heritage application, but again, if the applicant or staff would like to address the issue one more time, I will allow that.
Okay.
Okay, Mark, go ahead.
Drainage hasn't been addressed as yet.
Okay.
It will be done prior to.
Just need your microphone, sir.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. Oh, did you hear that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Did you get it?
Sure. The drainage issue has not been addressed as yet, which I think was part of your question.
Yeah.
But it will be prior to the larger scope of work that we're talking about.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for confirming that it will be addressed, that it's just the next stage of the process. Okay, any other questions or comments from committee? Okay, so are there any questions or comments from the public? Okay, I see none. So I'm going to look to the committee to move and second the motion. So can I have okay, Anne and Alex? And any other comments from committee regarding the motion? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? And that carries with Gunnar opposed. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to our last application, 1 and 5 Court Street and 150 West Street. Would staff please introduce the application? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this property, I'm sure everyone is quite familiar with. This is the landmark Frontenac County Courthouse complex. It includes the courthouse itself, the former registry office, and the former jailer's residence. The property is a National Historic Site of Canada. It's designated under both Parts 4 and 5, being in the Old Sydenham District. And it is also subject to a heritage easement agreement under Part 2 of the Heritage Act with the Ontario Heritage Trust. And just to take a half a second to explain that, as I don't know if the committee has seen, or some of the members have seen, a property that is subject to an easement with the trust. But the property, the courthouse itself and the registry office proper are subject to this 1989 heritage easement agreement with the Ontario Heritage Trust. The trust is an arm's length body appointed by the province of Ontario to advise the Minister of Citizenship and Multiculturalism on all matters related to the conservation of heritage in Ontario. They are afforded several powers under Part 2 of the Heritage Act, including the ability to own property or to hold easements to ensure proper conservation of resources for the people of Ontario. The trust has been circulated on this application, and they provided comments, which I've summarized in the report. They also have a separate approval process that requires submission of documents and such to the trust proper and a review in-house by them. We understand approval was granted on May 15th for this work by the trust. Now, unlike an easement agreement with the city under Part 4, which trumps approval processes elsewise in the Act for municipal purposes, these agreements with the trust don't trump a Part 4 approval, nor exempt the city from needing to render a decision under Part 5 for exterior alterations. So, with all that said, they have got their approval. The applicants have received approval from the trust. This application that we're looking at today is extensive, to say the least. It includes repair, replacement where necessary, and restoration of several key features on all 3 buildings that I mentioned. And I can go through the list if it's of interest, but it's extensive and it's in a report, so I will skip over that at the moment. but needless to say, if you see it on the building, it's probably has some attention to it. My colleagues at the Facilities Management and Construction Services who are here today have done an extensive job in researching and evaluating the features on this building. They've retained MTE Consultants, Inc., who I believe is also present, to undertake a detailed deterioration assessment and restoration plan for this property and these buildings. The proposed alterations before you in this application are as a result of that assessment and plan. And we have evaluated this and circulated it, of course, internally and externally to the committee as well. The courthouse, of course, is an iconic and much-loved historic building in Kingston and provides a dramatic backdrop to the city park. The staff are of the opinion that the proposal conforms to the intent and goals and policies of the old Sydenham District Plan and will uphold the conservation objectives of the city's official plan, and we recommend approval subject to the conditions in the report. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. Does the applicant have anything further to add to what's been said so far? I know this is a big project. Okay, and it's probably appropriate that we move to questions, seeing as there's a lot in here. Any questions or comments from the committee regarding this application? Okay, I'm not seeing any. All right. So with that in mind, then, I'm going to move to the public to see if there are any questions or comments.
I recognize Shirley Bailey online.
Go ahead, Shirley.
Good morning again, committee. You're going to think that I'm on a masonry bent this morning, but I did want to just point out that originally the mix that was proposed was a 1-1-6 mix, and I see through the discussion between the Ontario Heritage Trust and the city's facilities staff that the heritage mortar that's going to be used is a 1-2-8 mix. So I'm pleased to see that we are moving to that in terms of how we are we're changing out the pointing on our historic buildings. So just a comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shirley. Okay, and we have another member of the public who wishes to comment.
Thank you. I'm Don Taylor. Certainly, it's wonderful that this very important building is getting the renovations that it needs, and I've been very impressed with the way the project has been carried out. I'm particularly interested in the comments from the Ontario Trust people and the response to them, and it still leaves me with one question. It's my only slight concern over the whole project, is the work on the columns. There's a question of to what extent they are settling and need repair. I guess there is some difference of opinion between the Ontario Trust people and the local engineers, but from my point of view, there can be no question that the column foundations go down to bedrock. On the other hand, there appears to be no question that there has been some settling. So what is a question is whether the settling has stopped, in which case not much in the way of renovation and treatment is needed, but if there's a concern that it may continue. And certainly my expectation is that there should not be any significant further settling, but if the engineers have any information on how the settling has developed over the years, I think that's an important part of how we address this problem. So question is, should we expect that there is no further settling of the columns and therefore no extensive excavation and pouring of concrete is needed and simply dealt with by dealing with the mortar, maintenance of the mortar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. So I'm going to look to staff and the applicant. Would anyone like to respond?
This is a very specific technical question, Madam Chair. I'll pass it to my colleagues across the table here.
Okay, go ahead and just state your name, please.
Corey Saint Laurent, I'm with the consulting engineers on this one, MTE Consultants. So to that question, basically what we've found as part of our investigation is that the mortar in these foundations is quite deteriorated. It's lost all its basically cementing capacity, so it's in essence just sand. So there is still some possibility of settlement as that potentially gets washed out just through groundwater movements and everything. So what we're seeking to do is repair that, which would arrest any further concern over settlement.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now I need someone to move and second the motion. Gunnar and a seconder. Jen, thank you. Does the committee have any further comments or questions regarding the motion? Okay, and seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much for all the detailed and hard work that obviously went into this application, and I'm looking forward to seeing the final project completed. Okay, so there's no other business. We have no correspondence. The date of our next meeting is June 28th at 9:30 a.m., so I need someone to move and second for adjournment. Jen and Jane, thank you. All in favor? All right.